Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodhanandana Prajajana Ranjana Yashodhanandana Prajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Bana Chari Jamuna Tira Banachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodhanandana Prajajana Ranjana Yashodhanandana Prajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Vishnupada Paramahamsa Parivajikacharya Hasto Tadasadashi Śrīmad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jaya Vishnupada Paramahamsa Parivajikacharya Asto Tadasadashi Śrīmad Srila Bhaktivedanta Sarasvati Thakur Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vindaki Krantaraj Śrīmad Bhāgavatam Ji Nitai Gaura Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. Glories to Srila Prabhupada. Smari Murijam Bhaktivedanta Namameshwaraya Krishna Smari Bhaktivedanta Swami Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharani Namaste. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Vasudeva. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Today we're reading from Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, Canto 8, Withdrawal of the Cosmic Creations, Chapter 22. What verse have we got up there? 1 or 2? 1. Okay. We're going to read 1 and 2 because verse 1 doesn't have a purport. Ay. Sri Shukruvacha Evam Viprakrito Rajan Balir Bhagavata Suraha Vidyamano Pyabhinatma Pratyaha Viklavam Vachaha Sri Shukruvacha Evam Viprakrito Rajan Bale Bhagavata Suraha Vidyamano Pi Abhinatma Pratyaha Viklavam Vachaha Sri Shukruvacha Evam Viprakrito Rajan Balir Bhagavata Suraha Vidyamano Pi Abhinatma Pratyaha Viklavam Vachaha. Sri Shukruvacha Evam Viprakrito Rajan Bali Bhagavata Suraha Vidyamano Pi Abhinatma Pratyaha Viklavam Vachaha. Sri Shukruvacha Evam Viprakrito Rajan Bali Bhagavata Suraha Vidyamano Pyabhinatma Pratyaha Viklavam Vachaha. Sri Shukruvacha Evam Viprakrito Rajan Bali Bhagavata Suraha Vidyamano Pyabhinatma Pratyaha Viklavam Vachaha. Ladies? Sri Shukruvacha Evam Viprakrito Rajan Bali Bhagavata Suraha Vidyamano Pyabhinatma Pratyaha Viklavam Vachaha. Sri Shukruvacha Evam Viprakrito Rajan Bali Bhagavata Suraha Bijamanopya Vayamapma Vachabha Viklavam Vachaha Sri Shukuru Vacha Evam Viprakrito Rajan Balir Bhagavata Suraha Vijamano Pyabhinitma Pratyaha Viklavam Vachaha Sri Sukha Uvacha. Sri Sukadeva Goswami said, Evam, thus, as aforementioned, Viprakritaha, having been put into difficulty, Rajan, O King, Balihi, Maharaj Bali, Bhagavata, by the personality of Godhead, Vamanadev, Asura, the king of the Asuras, Bijamana Api, although situated in this uncomfortable position, Abhina Atma, without being disturbed in body or mind, Pratyaha replied, Aviklavam, undisturbed, Vachaha, the following words. Sukadeva Goswami said, O King, although the Supreme Personality of Godhead was superficially seen to have acted mischievously toward Bali Maharaj was fixed in his determination. Considering himself not to have fulfilled his promise, he spoke as follows. Text 2. Sri Baliruvacha. Are you going to follow along? You'd be doing well if you could, because this is quite a long meter on this verse. But let me just chant it. Yad yuttama shloka bhavan mameritam vacho vyalikam suravarya manyate karom yaritam tannabhavet pralambanam padam tritiyam kuru shrishni me nijam. Bali Maharaj said, O best personality of Godhead, most worshipable for all the demigods, if you think that my promise has become false, I shall certainly rectify matters to make it truthful. I cannot allow my promise to be false. Please, therefore, place your third lotus footstep on my head. Purport. Bali Maharaj could understand the pretense of Lord Vamanadev, who had taken the side of the demigods and come before him as a beggar. Although the Lord's purpose was to cheat him, Bali Maharaj took pleasure in understanding how the Lord will cheat his devotee to glorify the devotee's position. It is said that God is good, and this is a fact. Whether he cheats or rewards, he is always good. Bali Maharaj therefore addressed him as Uttama Shloka. Your Lordship, he said, you are always praised with the best of selected verses. On behalf of the demigods, you disguised yourself to cheat me, saying that you wanted only 3 pieces of land. But later, you expanded your body to such an extent that with 2 footsteps, you covered the entire universe. Because you were working on behalf of your devotees, you do not regard this as cheating. Never mind. I cannot be considered a devotee. Nonetheless, because although you are the husband of the goddess of fortune, you have come to me to beg. I must satisfy you to the best of my ability. So please, do not think that I wanted to cheat you. I must fulfill my promise. I still have my body. When I place my body for your satisfaction, please put your 3rd step on my head. Since the Lord had covered the entire universe with 2 steps, one might ask how Bali Maharaj's head could be sufficient for his 3rd step. Bali Maharaj, however, thought that the possessor of wealth must be greater than the possession. Therefore, although the Lord had taken all his possessions, the head of Bali Maharaj, the possessor, would provide adequate place for the Lord's 3rd step. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshurun Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Dena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mahyam Tadati Svapadantikam Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayate Gurim Yat Kripa Tamaham Bande Sri Gurum Dinatavinam. What is a pretense? What is a pretense? Anybody know? Or like to offer an explanation? What is a pretense?
Pretending to be something that aren't.
Yes, pretending to be something that you're not. So we have a very interesting situation here where Bali Maharaj has been cheated. Right? He's been cheated. Lord Vamanadev has appeared as a dwarf. So what's the outstanding characteristic of a dwarf? Huh? Small, that's right, they're small. And so, do people take dwarfs very seriously? Well, in terms of stature, no. Huh? Not very big. And looked down upon because they're small, right? So the Lord is appearing in a very small form. But of course, the devotees know that even though the Lord appears in small forms, still He's the owner and possessor, the controller, the proprietor of everything, whether He appears small or big. Just like when Krishna appeared as a baby to Putana, the Bhagavatam describes how the appearance of the Lord as a baby is like the appearance of hot coals covered by ash. So sometimes, when you light a fire, especially a big bonfire, right? In the wintertime, you light a big bonfire, and then the flames have all gone out, and the fire itself is covered by ash, but under the ash are red hot burning coals, right? And so if you step in the fire and you happen to step on one of them, you'll get severely burnt, right? So even though the potency of the fire is covered by ash, still the full potency of the fire exists underneath that covering. So similarly, Lord Vamanadeva appears, he's covered by this apparently small form. Or what's the other example in that story of Putana? A sharp blade, a sword, right? Covered by a, what do we call the covering of a sword? Scabbard. I don't think it's mentioned in the... Sheath. Yes, a sheath. And so the sword is covered by the sharpness and the potency of the sword is covered by the sheath, but that doesn't reduce its power or its potency. Right? So similarly, Lord Vamanadeva appears in the form of a dwarf and so therefore could have been dismissed. But it's very interesting that Bali Maharaj recognized the Lord. And so did Śrīmad. Well, and of course, because Śrīmad is a demon and was more concerned about his material possessions than serving the Lord, he was greatly disturbed by the fact that Lord Vamanadeva was cheating, right? This is what a pretense means. We pretend to be one thing, but actually we're another. Have any of you experienced that, where somebody's made out to you that they're one thing and then they end up being another? Have you experienced that? How did you feel? Let down. Yeah. Cheated. Right? People make friends with you and then they criticize you. Right? Have you experienced that? Yep. So ordinarily, and Śrīmad responded, reacted, you're trying to cheat us. And he said to Bali Maharaj, beware. It's Lord Vamanadeva. Well, he didn't call him Lord Vamanadeva. He's Lord Vishnu. He's trying to cheat us. Which is very interesting. Very interesting, because what was Bali Maharaj's response to Vamanadeva's cheating? What's his response? Even though the Lord cheated him, He didn't mind. In fact, he felt as if he had broken his promise. Right? Even though Vamanadev had said, all I want is 3 steps of land. Right? And obviously, if a dwarf asks for 3 steps of land, that's not very much. That's why Bali Maharaj said to Lord Vamanadev, you're not very intelligent. Right? I'm the proprietor of the whole universe, practically speaking. I'm the controller of the whole universe, and you're only asking for me 3 steps of land. You could ask for much more than that. Of course, it's interesting, isn't it, that Vamanadev is appearing as a Brahmana, so he doesn't need more than 3 steps of land. You know, in terms of space to lie down, how much space do we need? 3 steps should pretty much do it. That's it. That's all the space that you need to take rest. A Brahmana lives very simply, ideally, right? Samodamastapasocham chantir arjavam evacha arjavam. Isn't that simplicity? Living simply. As Prabhupada mentions in the 7 purposes of ISKCON, we're to teach simple living and high thinking. This is the role of a Brahmana. Right? So, even though Lord Vamanadev is acting as a Brahmana, he maintains the qualities and the characteristics of a Brahmana. Right? But when Vamanadev reveals his full potency as Lord Vishnu, and he takes the whole universe. In fact, he puts his toe through the covering of the universe. Then Baladev is met with a quandary. How should he respond? And it's interesting, in the previous verse it's mentioned that he wasn't disturbed. Right? He wasn't disturbed by and it's interesting what Sukadev Goswami says. He says, although the Supreme Personality of Godhead was superficially, right, so this mask or disguise as a dwarf Brahmana, it's just superficial, was superficially seen to have acted mischievously. Right? He's being a mischief. And of course, that's very interesting, isn't it? Because one of the characteristics of Krishna is that he's very mischievous. So we can see Lord Vamanadev is being true to his character in many respects. Krishna likes to be mischievous. Right? When he stole the clothes of the gopis, he was being mischievous. Right? And of course that mischievous nature or character of Krishna is very endearing for the residents of Vrindavan, right? They like to talk. They get great pleasure about talking about Krishna and his mischievousness, right? And so it's interesting here, Śrīmad was disturbed by the mischievousness and the pretense of Vamanadev, but Bali Maharaj was not. Right? He wasn't. And so what happened? Asura Vidyamana api abhina atma. Abhina atma. Which means even though he was in an uncomfortable position, because everything had been taken away from him, and he couldn't fulfill his promise. 2 steps have been taken, everything of his is gone, so where's the 3rd step going to go? He's covered everything. Started off as a Brahmana, but revealed his universal form. Right? But Bali Maharaj, because he's a devotee, he was still fixed. He was still determined to fulfill the promise, somehow or other. Huh? And everything was taken away. So then, what does he do? He's a devotee, and so immensely resourceful, right? And determined. Determined to serve, ultimately. You know, the great setback, everything's been taken, but he's determined to fulfill the promise. So what does he say? I cannot allow my promise to be false. Therefore, place your 3rd lotus footstep on my head. Right? So, and he calls Vamanadev Uttama Shloka. In other words, that person who is glorified by transcendental song or verse. Right? So even though Vamanadev is appearing as a cheat, still he's glorified as Uttama Shloka. And so Bali Maharaj says, you are always praised with the best of selected verses. On behalf of the demigods, you disguised yourself to cheat me, saying that you wanted only 3 paces of land. But later, you expanded your body to such an extent that with 2 footsteps you covered the entire universe. Now here's an interesting statement that Prabhupada makes. Because you were working on behalf of your devotees, you do not regard this as cheating. Right? You do not regard this as cheating. So what does that mean? If we're working on behalf of the devotees, we can cheat. Huh? Some are smiling, yes. Some are saying no. Right. But this is interesting. Right? Bali Maharaj is saying, you're cheating. But because you are working on behalf of the devotees, it doesn't matter that you're cheating. Right? So it appears that in some situations, it may be okay to cheat. Right? Especially if you're working on behalf of the devotees. It's okay. But don't try to cheat the devotees. But what does Bali Maharaj say? It is very interesting. He says, never mind. I cannot be considered a devotee. Right? Very, very interesting, very salient point. Right? Bali Maharaj, even though he's the most exalted devotee, what do we see? And we see this in the character of devotees. They don't think they're very advanced devotees. This is a symptom of an Uttama Adhikari. The Kanishta Adhikari generally thinks that I'm the best devotee, or at least I'm a good devotee, or a pretty good devotee, right? and often will compete. The Kanishtas will compete with each other to, who's going to stand at the front, who's going to tell everybody what to do, who's going to be prominent. But very interesting, the characteristic or the character of an advanced devotee, they shun prominence and they value service. Just like we see in the Shikshastakam in the final prayer of how Lord Chaitanya in the mood of Srimati Radharani says, if my inconvenience is your happiness, then my inconvenience is my happiness. Right? And you can see that with Bali Maharaj is not saying, you just cheated me. Right? He's not saying, he's not complaining, you cheated me, like Śrīmad right? But rather, Bali Maharaj is accepting his role as a servant and humbly is feeling, I couldn't fulfill my promise. I couldn't, he's saying, it appears as if I couldn't fulfill my promise, but I'm determined to fulfill my promise to you. Which is an interesting attitude, right? The interesting attitude of a devotee. A devotee may fail, or there may be some setbacks, but still they maintain their determination to continue on as a devotee. Right? Even if you even if you handle me roughly by your embrace, or make me broken-hearted. This is Lord Chaitanya's prayer in the mood of Srimati Radharani. You're still my worshipful Lord. Which is what Bali Maharaj is. You cheated me, but I'm not a devotee, but I'm still determined to serve you. This is Bali Maharaj exemplifies the Atma Nivedanam principle of giving everything. He's the emblem of sacrificing everything for the service of the Lord. So, and he makes the comment, you are the master of the goddess of fortune, right? You're the master of the goddess of fortune. That means you own everything. But still you came to me as a beggar, right? So you don't need to be begging from me, right? But why did Vamanadev come? Because Vamanadev wanted that interaction and that exchange with Bali Maharaj, because Bali Maharaj is such a great devotee. And Lord Vamanadev wanted to illustrate that, amplify that, so that everybody would know. Hey, take it easy. Unless you want 6 people to jump on you, don't go into the altar. Don't stand there. So interesting. Bali Maharaj wasn't able to fulfill his promise, but then he realized, okay, I just offer my body, right, my soul, myself. Interesting, it's mentioned before, what is it? Abhinatma, undisturbed in the self, right? But the self can mean the body, the self can mean the mind. Atma can be the body, Atma can be the mind, Atma can be the spiritual self, right? So, Bali Maharaj is offering everything to the Lord unconditionally. And of course that's why his Lord Vamanadev has appeared. And as Prabhupada mentions in a previous purport, to have a bit of a joke, to experience a humorous exchange, right, with Bali Maharaj, to experience that rasa of humour, and also challenge, because Bali Maharaj, as the king of the demons, he's controlling he's kicked the demigods out of the heavenly planets, and has taken control of the whole universe. And so there's a little, even though he's a Brahmana, there's a little bit of a challenge there, right? Challenging the Kshatriya spirit of Bali Maharaj, the king of the demons, but in essence, or at heart, wanting to reciprocate with his devotee. And we see that in Prabhupada's lifetime, many devotees' lifetimes. There are challenges, there are difficulties, there are sometimes insurmountable challenges. When Prabhupada in the 40s, late 40s and 50s, when Srila Prabhupada was preaching as a vanaprastha, I guess you could say, right? He left home, went to live in Vrindavan, Delhi, Vrindavan, and spent all of his time writing and publishing and distributing Back to Godhead magazines, right? In incredibly austere circumstances. In fact, somebody was telling me the other day how Prabhupada described himself as, up until the age of 70, loitering around and not doing anything. In the context of when he went to America, then he actually started to do something. And why would that? Why would Prabhupada think like that? Why do you think Prabhupada would think like that? That prior to 1965, he was just loitering around and not doing anything. And then post 1965, he was actually doing something. Why would he think like that? Huh? He's humble, yes. Obviously humble, but why? More details. Vera? Louder, louder.
The instruction of his spiritual master was to give this message to English-speaking words.
That's right. Yes. So Prabhupada didn't feel that he was actually executing the order of his spiritual master until he went to New York. Then he was actually doing something. But even then, for a couple of years, struggle street. Right? Just struggle. But didn't give up and didn't lose faith. So a very interesting characteristic of a devotee is their determination, even in difficult situations. One may not be able to fulfill the order of the spiritual master, or one may not manifest all of the qualities of a devotee. And so it's natural for a devotee to feel some misgivings, right? Humility. And so we see that with Bali Maharaj. I couldn't fulfill my promise, but I will, I must. He's determined to. And so, he was inspired. Okay, you could put your last step on my head. Taken everything else. So, in this way, Lord Vamanadev is glorifying the wonderful devotee, Bali Maharaj, and in a humorous way is revealing the wonderful qualities of his very dear devotee. And even though, as the story progresses, Bali Maharaj is punished, right? He's punished for not fulfilling his promise. The Lord agreed to accompany him to Sutala Loka, right, which is the topmost of the lower planetary systems, and even is described as being better than the residence of the demigods. So even though everything was taken away, he was given, in the end, as part of his punishment, he was given a residence even better than the residence of the demigods, and Lord Vamanadev agreed to accompany him and be his doorkeeper, Upendra, right? The doorkeeper of Bali Maharaj's palace in the hellish planets, in the topmost of the hellish planets. So it's a very nice meditation, this pastime, and it illustrates, that the tension, if you like, and also the reciprocation and show of affection and exchange between Krishna and his devotee. Right? And what a great personality the Lord is, and what a great personality is his devotee. So, no cheating, okay? Except in certain circumstances. But you've got to be careful about cheating. Because ultimately Krishna is the biggest cheat. Okay, does anybody have any comments or questions? Very well.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you for the class. In our ordinary dealings, we see that if someone cheats us, we feel let down and betrayed, and we sort of get, we don't want to trust that person anymore, or we don't know who to trust again. And when
in business, this is very common.
Yeah.
Right? Just like the devotees who buy flowers at the market are always warned by the experienced purchasers, check, because the flower merchants will put the good flowers on the top, but underneath the flowers will be rotten. Anybody experienced this? Any garland makers here? No garland makers here. They're all making garlands, huh?
Yeah, so in a devotee's life, even if somebody cheats us, we see it as Krishna's arrangement to purify us. But how do we get this determination that Bali Maharaj had, even if Krishna cheats us or somebody else cheats us and it's Krishna's plan, how do we get be fixed in our determination to continue to trust Krishna.
One of the hardest things to take is when you've been cheated by a devotee. That's one of the toughest experience. Or you know, that's our perception. Our perception is. Often when we're facing difficulties or challenges, the tendency is to fault the external manifestation of the problem, right? And so the problem might exist in terms of our being roughly or mishandled by either circumstance or persons, right? Very often persons. This is our biggest. So our natural response to that is going to be regret, despair, a feeling of being let down, right? But a more introspective approach that most devotees will take is, I am getting a reaction from my past misdeeds, right? So if I'm being mistreated now, that means I probably mistreated somebody previously, right? So we look internally and we accept that the Super Soul's within everybody's heart. He's directing the wanderings of everybody, right? And so it would be superficial to blame the person that's the agent of my, or the circumstance that's the agent of my karma, right? Of course, there's problems with that, right? Because, you know, I don't know if you've experienced it, but you'll get devotees who are saying, you know, I'm just the agent of your karma, you've got to live with it. Right? And so, you know, we shouldn't be abusive in our dealings with others or using that as an excuse to exercise our own frustrations or our own nastiness or meanness, right? But it's really that perspective that keeps us focused and intent on serving Krishna, even though there may be some difficulties or some challenges. Because ultimately we know, as Prabhupada says here, that Krishna is good, right? Krishna is always good. And so when there's a challenging circumstance, then the devotee looks internally. Now it's very interesting that we see within our community of devotees a lot of bitterness amongst a certain portion of the community. And there's a blame, oh, this one and that one and blah, 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 blah. So that's not easy sometimes, especially in very difficult circumstances where somebody has been exploited or abused even by devotees. And it's very difficult then for the trauma of the victim is so great that they project all of the problem onto the perpetrator. But very interesting, see here, Bali Maharaj didn't do that. Maharaj Parikshit, was it Maharaj Parikshit? Ambarish Maharaj? Well, here's another example, but no, the bull. When Maharaj Parikshit came across the bull being battered by Kali, right? Then the bull wouldn't say who did it, who was doing it, right? Because the inference was ultimately it was Krishna's arrangement, but he couldn't blame Krishna, right? Interesting, right? So, for some, the abusive or difficult situations, the challenge is so great they can't internalize and accept responsibility for it themselves, which is fair enough, which, you know, given some of the circumstances, right? But here, Bali Maharaj is not blaming anybody. He's saying, you're doing this for my benefit. Right? And we see that in the character of very advanced devotees. They accept the responsibility for their suffering as their, you know, they accept it as their fault, right? Very humble, that's a very humble position, right? So, where do they get that? Where does that ability to accept their circumstances in that mood, where does that come from? Anybody like to say? Chandrika? From what? From the mercy of a devotee. How? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's an explanation. Bali Maharaj is the grandson of the son and the grandson of very exalted persons. So association, effectively, right? Okay. Yeah. That's reasonable. How else? What's that? Talking to the, I can't hear.
All abilities come from Krishna.
All
abilities
come from Krishna.
Yeah.
How come some get it and some don't?
Mercy and karma.
Mercy, karma, yeah. Yeah, interesting. That's Sukadev, what do you think? Give the microphone to Sukadev. Or yeah, we'll come back to you. What's that?
I lost the thread.
Lots of?
Lost the thread. What was the question? What's the? I lost the thread. What's the?
Lost the thread. Oh, the question is, how does one develop the faith to accept one's circumstance and to maintain enthusiasm to keep moving on? Where does that, without becoming frustrated or what do we say in ISKCON terminology? Fried. Without becoming fried. Give Prabhu the microphone.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu, just a point on that and another comment on something else, if that's all right.
What was it? Sorry, I missed that.
I just want to. I can answer and make a point on these questions, and then
Yeah, sure.
I want to make a comment on something else.
That's why we've given you the microphone.
Hare Krishna.
It better be good.
I'll try my best.
That's okay. I'm kidding.
So I think this point that was made about how do I deal with the fact that someone's being a bit offensive or harsh towards me,
Or cheating even.
or cheating me. I mean, firstly, you have to understand that's just your ego and your subtle body that's getting affected. It's not really you, your soul. You know?
That's right. You're not the body.
Yeah.
You know you're not the body. You're just a spirit soul.
Yeah, and I think it's the ego that's getting rubbed, and that's a gift from Krishna because he's saying, how attached are you to this concept of what you are, Mr. Jones? Why do you think you're Mr. Jones that's been offended? You know. So I think
or Miss Sharma.
Sharma, yeah. So how you feel that compunction, how you feel the pain is also telling you a yardstick of I need to work on my detachment from my own ego.
Yeah, but try telling that to some of the child abuse survivors.
Yeah.
Not so. You're right.
Yeah.
And so, and very often we have a jnana response.
Yeah.
But then there's also a bhakti response, right? Because people hurt from, there's pain that comes from being cheated, right? Or there's pain that comes from abuse and difficult circumstances created by others. Yeah.
And Krishna's, sometimes getting rid of both good and bad karma, as you said. That's his gift. He's sort of giving you that punishment to accelerate your journey towards him.
Yeah.
And then the point about the mischief, which I thought was a fantastic point that you made. We also got to remember that Krishna is param dharma. He's the ultimate dharma. So, like when Maharaj Yudhishthira in Mahabharata, he's unwilling to say completely that Ashwastama is dead. The elephant is dead. Of course,
Tell a lie.
Tell a lie. And he has to see hell for a moment because he didn't understand that actually what Krishna is saying is the ultimate righteousness, and the mischief that Krishna does is actually above material conceptions of morality and ethics. It's an eternal standard that transcends the material energy. So,
but don't imitate. Don't imitate.
Absolutely, Hare Krishna.
Yeah, very good points.
Yeah,
very good points.
That was my point.
And I tend to coalesce with Chandrika's point. It's association. And we read, one of the things that Srila Prabhupada does in his teachings and in his lectures, in his books, he models for us what the proper devotional response is to difficult situations. And he did it himself. And so and when we're reading Prabhupada's purports or hearing his lectures, Prabhupada often demonstrates in the course of his presentation what the appropriate response is to a difficult situation. And for those who are fortunate enough to absorb that mood, even though it might be unpalatable, right, or difficult, we're actually modelled the thought process and the response by associating with Srila Prabhupada, even if it's not directly, but through his books and whatever. And also the examples of the previous acharyas. If you look at Haridas Thakur, beaten in 24, 26 marketplaces. And as you mentioned, Ambarish Maharaj, and many others, Bali Maharaj. There are so many examples of the appropriate response on which we meditate, and as a result of that meditation and that example are inspired by, and so we emulate that, or we maybe imitate that, at least initially, or even it may be that there are devotees who have that quality or characteristic carried over from a previous life, right? They have embedded that in their in their natural response to difficult situations as a result of lessons learned in a previous lifetime. Otherwise, there are plenty of bad examples which we don't follow. So, how do you cultivate that? Can we have the microphone back here, please?
I also like Chandrika Priya's point about keeping good association. And I was
Good
thinking
association, yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking that Bali Maharaj had made up his mind that I am going to serve Vishnu,
Yeah.
and he wanted to give everything to him from the start.
He was determined,
he was-
which
yeah.
is a characteristic of a devotee, yeah.
Yeah. So I was thinking of that, just having that attitude that come what may, I am going to be a devotee of Krishna, whether it's going to
Yeah.
be difficult or easy.
Yeah.
And also the point about the Shikshashtakam verse, it's an advanced level of consciousness, but trying to at least keep that, keep side of that and aspire for that consciousness.
Yep. Chandrika.
I also think that as we read more, we practice more, we get attached to devotees, we get attachment to Srila Prabhupada also increases. And that also helps, because sometimes if we have some misgivings from devotees, but because we see them serving Srila Prabhupada, carrying on with devotional service, it's easier to let go because of that attachment to, or little attachment to, yeah.
What about cheating? What about cheating? Should we cheat people or not? What do you think? Hands up those who think it's okay to cheat. Nobody. It's okay to cheat people on book distribution. When is it okay to cheat? When there's a higher purpose. Ah. Yeah, higher purpose. How do we know what we're doing is a higher purpose?
As you said, anything we do on behalf of devotees or the Lord.
Okay, yeah. Yeah. But you have to be very expert, very, very expert. Krishna can do it. We may not. We may not. So generally we don't cheat. You know, devotees are meant to be honest. Satyam, truthful. Right? And what we see is where there's cheating or lying, you know, even though it's on behalf of Krishna, it can become very much a habit, and then before you know it, you're cheating everybody and you don't realise it. And then everybody's thinking, what's wrong with this guy? You know, what's wrong with him? So, because Prabhupada does, what did Prabhupada say here in that purport? On behalf of the demigods, you disguised yourself to cheat me, saying that you wanted only 3 paces of land, but later you expanded your body to such an extent that with 2 footsteps you covered the entire universe. Because you were working on behalf of your devotees, you do not regard this as cheating. Yeah. So that needs to be very, very selectively and carefully applied. And we saw this in the 70s when the devotees were doing book distribution on the street. Even the devotees had developed a philosophy and a practice called the change-up. Have you heard of the change-up? Maybe I shouldn't tell you. The change-up. And with disastrous results, right? Or even the devotees were selling books, and initially all in devotional attire, but were meeting resistance because, you know, the population of Australia is limited, and they sold everybody pretty much a Krishna book and a Bhagavad Gita and Nectar of Devotion, right? And so people were saying, no, I've already got that. I've already got it. And of course the devotees had the pressure of wanting to collect to pay for this temple in good part, right? So they're thinking, oh, how can we rectify this situation? So then they decided we'll wear plain clothes, right? And the men, to disguise their bald heads, they wore wigs, right? So how did the public react to that? You're cheating us, right? And you know, the irony of it, you're a Hare Krishna, we know you got a bald head, but you're wearing a wig. It's like, what are you doing? Right? And so the devotees, instead of appearing to be the presenters of truth, param satyam, they were accepted as cheats. Right? And nobody would buy, you know, but when I joined in 1978, we'd go out on book distribution on the street, but people would spit at you, they'd see you, and then they'd just cross the road. And you know, what's going on here, right? So we were doing it on behalf of Srila Prabhupada and Krishna, and it was all for a good cause, but what was the end result? People hated us. They hated the Hare Krishnas because they saw us as cheats. Far out, huh? So we got the unintended consequence of being seen as cheaters and plunder, you know, thieves. The interesting thing is, though, that we stopped that fairly quickly because money wasn't. Book distribution was, in its heyday, was bringing in large amounts of money for the temple. Even we can see now, book distribution can be quite lucrative. So no money coming in, so the devotees had to rethink, this is not working, what are we going to do? So we stopped that. And then that's when we started selling paintings and candles and cookies and stickers and you name it. You know, I found it amusing that as a devotee, I visited all of the pubs in Victoria. But as they say, you know, if you see Lord Nityananda going into the hotel, don't think that he's going in to have a drink, right? So I found that quite amusing. Because the pubs were good places to go and sell things, right? And in good part, you know, we paid off this temple and we raised a lot of money to maintain the temple and to purchase the farm, for example, and other projects that ISKCON pursued in the 80s was because of our fundraising and intermingling, I guess, with the people of Australia. And then the profits that we made, we would purchase books, and then we would go out on Harinam and give books out. We'd just give books away. And so within a matter of 2 or 3 years, the population's attitude towards the Hare Krishna devotees was they're givers, not takers. interestingly enough. So we were seen as giving, not stealing, and naturally more favourable. In fact, we made devotees just by distributing giving books. Yeah. I remember Vasudhan came to the temple. He got a Science of Self-Realization off of the windscreen of his car. Somebody put a book on the windscreen of his car, right? And I was in ecstasy when I met him and I was selling full sets in those days, so I pulled out the brochure and I showed it to him. And I didn't have to say anything. He said, "Oh, I want to buy a set of that books." So I was thinking, "Whoa, a bhakta." Whoa. So, yeah, very interesting how, cheating may be appropriate in some business dealings, Prabhupada says. For a Vaishya, effectively a Vaishya is a cheat. Or at least he tells people, I'm giving you the best price, even though it's inflated out of all proportion, right? I saw an article on the news yesterday where Choice, have you heard of Choice? Choice, the association, they have a magazine called Choice, and they expose rip-offs. They present. They do an analysis of products and services, and they say, avoid this one. This one is what you should do. So they discovered that I think it's Woolworths selling Brute. It's like a cologne, yeah, and it's a third the size of the previous version and 3 times the price. Right? So, who's surprised by that kind of behaviour? Nobody, but of course you avoid it. So, in business it's accepted that there's a bit of misrepresentation, let's put it that way. Right? Especially, have any of you been to India? And dealt with, businessmen in the markets? When I walk down Loy Bazaar, there's all the market wallahs who say, "Oh, Aniruddha Prabhu, come here." Because they know Melbourne Temple it's good to do business with the Melbourne Temple. Right? "Oh, no, we've got some really cheap deals here for you." Then we go next door and we discover it's 3 times the price of what the guy next door's got. So you've got to shop. That's why we go shopping, right? Is that why we go shopping? We go shopping to get a bargain. Okay, I think we should finish here. Grantharaj Śrīmad Bhāgavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaura Bhakta Brinda ki jai, Bali Maharaj ki jai, Sri Vamana Dev ki jai. Let us all be cheated by Krishna.